My heart hammered against my ribs. Mark walked out of that interview room. His face told me everything. Pale, defeated. The pride he wore with his uniform just moments before, gone, vanished. All because of one man's words. Words that would soon echo far beyond those four walls. I'm Sarah. And Mark? Well, Mark is my husband, my rock, my hero. He'd served our country for 10 long years. 10 years of deployments. 10 years of missed birthdays and holidays. 10 years of me holding my breath until he was safely home. He was strong, brave, always putting others first. That uniform wasn't just fabric and thread to him, it was a part of him. It was sacrifice. It was honor. Now he was transitioning back to civilian life. It was a scary step for both of us. The military was all he'd known as an adult. He worried about fitting in, about finding his place. I just wanted him to be happy, to find something that gave him purpose, just like the army had. This job interview was a big deal. A really big deal. It was with a well-known company, a manager position, something that could give us stability, a fresh start. Mark spent weeks preparing. He researched the company. He practiced answering questions. He even bought a new suit, though he often joked his uniform was his best suit. He was nervous, of course. More nervous than I'd ever seen him before any mission. He wanted this so badly. Not just for the money, but to prove to himself he could succeed outside the army. To build a new life for us. We talked about our dreams. A little house, maybe a dog. Simple things. This job felt like the key to unlocking those dreams. The night before, he carefully laid out his new suit. He polished his shoes until they shone. I tried to reassure him. You've got this, I said, squeezing his hand. He just smiled, a tight, worried smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The morning of the interview was chaotic. Murphy's Law, I guess. Our alarm didn't go off. We woke up late, in a rush. Then the dry cleaner called. They had somehow misplaced his new suit trousers. Just the trousers. The jacket was there, hanging uselessly. Panic set in. Mark looked at the clock. He had an early start at his volunteer shift at the Veterans Center right after the interview. There would be no time to go home and change, even if he miraculously found other suitable trousers. He was already running late for the interview itself. He looked at his uniform, hanging pristine in the closet. I have to go in this, Sarah, he said, his voice strained. There's no time, and I need to be in uniform for the center later anyway. I hesitated. Are you sure, Mark? He nodded, his jaw set. It's clean. It's formal. It represents who I am, what I've done. Maybe they'll respect that. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself more than me. I hoped, with all my heart, that he was right. He looked so sharp, so dignified in it. How could anyone see that as a bad thing? I waited in the car, my stomach churning with nerves. An hour passed, then another 30 minutes. It felt like an eternity. Finally he came out of the building, and that's when I saw his face. The story began there in his shattered expression. Later, much later, when he could finally speak about it, he told me what happened. He walked into the interview room. The interviewer, a Mr. Henderson, barely looked up from his papers. Mark introduced himself politely. He offered a handshake. Mr. Henderson's eyes scanned Mark, from his polished boots to his neatly placed beret, a slow, deliberate scan. Then a small, almost invisible sneer touched the corner of his lips. A soldier, I see, Mr. Henderson said. His voice was cold, not welcoming, not even neutral. Mark tried to stay positive. Yes, sir, recently transitioned. I'm eager to apply my leadership skills here. Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair. He tapped his pen on the polished desk. Tap, tap, tap. We're a serious company, Mr. Walker. Mark Walker, sir. Mr. Walker, we're looking for serious professionals, not costume enthusiasts. Mark flinched. I felt the sting of those words even as he recounted them to me. Hours later, costume enthusiast? His uniform? The uniform he had served in, sacrificed in. Sir, this is my official uniform, Mark explained, his voice tight but still respectful. I had a prior engagement at the Veterans Center immediately following this, and due to an unforeseen issue with my suit this morning, I had insufficient time to change. But I assure you, I take this interview very seriously. Mr. Henderson just raised an eyebrow. Is that so, or are you trying to gain some sort of advantage? Playing the hero card, perhaps? Mark was stunned. He told me he felt his blood run cold. He tried to steer the conversation back to his qualifications, his experience, his leadership abilities that were so clearly outlined on his resume. But Mr. Henderson seemed fixated on the uniform. He asked condescending questions. Did you think we give out jobs based on military service alone? Do you expect special treatment because you wore that? Each question was a tiny dagger, chipping away at Mark's composure. Mark said he felt smaller and smaller with each passing moment. The interview barely touched on his skills or what he could bring to the company. It was all about his attire, his service, framed as a negative, as a gimmick, as if his years of dedication were a cheap trick. After what felt like an eternity of this verbal assault, Mr. Henderson stood up abruptly. I think we're done here, Mr. Walker. We'll be in touch if your unique approach somehow fits our needs. The sarcasm in his voice was thick, dripping with disdain. Mark just nodded, unable to find his voice. He walked out, the words costume enthusiast and hero card burning in his ears. When he got to the car, he slumped into the passenger seat. He didn't say anything for a long, heavy moment. I just reached over and took his hand. It was trembling. What happened? I finally whispered, afraid of the answer. He told me. Bit by bit. The anger rose in me, hot and fierce. How could anyone treat him like that? Treat his service, his sacrifice, with such blatant disrespect. That man is a fool, Mark, I said, my voice shaking with rage. A cruel, ignorant fool. Mark just stared ahead, his eyes distant. Maybe he's right, Sarah. Maybe I don't fit in. Maybe this whole civilian life thing was a mistake. My heart broke into a million pieces. To see him, my strong, brave Mark, so utterly defeated by one man's prejudice. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about respect. It was about dignity. We drove home in a heavy silence. The dreams we'd talked about so excitedly just the night before felt miles away, shrouded in a fog of disappointment. That night, Mark didn't sleep. He just stared at the ceiling, the hurt etched on his face. I held him, wishing I could somehow absorb his pain and make it my own. The next day, Mark was quiet, withdrawn, lost in his thoughts. I couldn't let it go. I was furious. I had to do something. I told my sister Jane. Jane is a bit of a social media whiz, always knows what's happening online. She was horrified when I told her Mark's story. That's outrageous, Sarah, absolutely disgusting, she exclaimed. She asked Mark if he was okay with her sharing the story, anonymously, of course. Just the basic facts. Soldier, uniform, disrespectful interviewer. Mark was hesitant at first. He didn't want to cause trouble or make a fuss, but he also didn't want anyone else to go through what he had. He agreed, as long as his name and the company's name weren't mentioned initially. Jane posted it on a local community forum. Just a short paragraph. A veteran friend went for an important job interview yesterday. Due to unavoidable circumstances and a commitment right after, he had to wear his military uniform. The interviewer mocked his service and his attire, calling it a costume. Is this how we treat those who've served and sacrificed for us? The reaction was instant and huge. Comments flooded in. People were angry. This is unacceptable. What company was this? This interviewer needs to be fired. Name and shame them. Other veterans shared their own similar, though perhaps less blatant, experiences of feeling misunderstood or undervalued in job interviews. The post was shared and shared again. It moved from the local forum to wider social media platforms. It was like a spark had hit dry tinder. The story resonated with so many people. They felt protective of veterans. They felt this injustice keenly. Within 24 hours, the story, still anonymous regarding Mark and the company, was everywhere in our city's online spaces. The word outrage was being used a lot. It was clear this had struck a nerve. The company wasn't named in Jane's post, but people started guessing. Our city isn't that huge. There are only so many well-known companies hiring for manager positions. Soon Mark started getting calls and messages from friends, other veterans. Was that you, Mark? That story online? They'd ask, their voices concerned. He was uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but also a little heartened by the wave of support. Then someone figured it out, an ex-employee of that company perhaps, or someone who recognized the description of the interviewer. They named the company in a comment under Jane's expanded post. Bet it was Henderson at Omnicorp. He's always been an arrogant jerk. Suddenly Omnicorp was in the spotlight. Their social media pages were bombarded with angry comments. People demanded answers. They demanded an apology for Mark. OmniCorp's first reaction was defensive. They released a vague statement. OmniCorp is committed to fair hiring practices. We are looking into an alleged incident that has been brought to our attention via social media. It felt dismissive. It felt like a corporate brush-off. It only fueled the public's anger. Then came the first twist. A local news blogger, known for her investigative pieces, picked up the story. She did some digging. She managed to get an internal memo that had been leaked from OmniCorp. The memo, written by Mr. Henderson to the HR department, described Mark's interview. In it, Henderson called Mark unprofessional and attempting to leverage military service inappropriately for sympathy or advantage. He strongly recommended Mark not be hired. The memo confirmed Mark's account of what was said, but it also showed Henderson's perspective, however skewed and unfair it was. He genuinely seemed to believe Mark was trying to manipulate him. This leaked memo made things even worse for OmniCorp. Now it wasn't just an anonymous story floating online. There was documented proof of Mr. Henderson's prejudiced attitude. The pressure on the company intensified tenfold. We felt like we were in the middle of a media storm. Mark was deeply worried about being blacklisted, about this incident ruining his chances of finding any good job. Maybe I should have just kept quiet. Sarah, he said one evening, his head in his hands. I held him close. No, Mark, you did nothing wrong. He did. But I was scared too. What if this all backfired on him terribly? The CEO of OmniCorp, a Mr. Davies, finally announced he would hold a press conference. Everyone in town was talking about it. Everyone expected either a full groveling apology and Henderson's immediate dismissal, or a stubborn doubling down on the company's initial stance. We watched it live online, my hand gripping Mark so tightly my knuckles were white. Mr. Davies appeared on screen, looking serious and somber. He started by saying, "We have thoroughly investigated the incident involving Mr. Mark Walker and our interviewer, Mr. Henderson." He acknowledged the public outcry and the company's initial missteps in responding. Then he said, Mr. Henderson's conduct during the interview was inappropriate. His comments were unacceptable, and they do not reflect the values of OmniCorp. And for that, OmniCorp apologizes sincerely and unreservedly to Mr. Walker. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Mark nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. An apology, a public one. But then Mr. Davies continued. However, our investigation revealed something more, something that adds a layer of complexity to this unfortunate situation. My stomach tightened again. What now? Mr. Henderson, Davies said, his voice grave, is himself a veteran, a combat veteran from an earlier conflict. A collective gasp seemed to go through the virtual audience, and certainly through me. Mark looked utterly shocked. His eyes widened, and he sat bolt upright. He served his country with distinction, Davies went on, but he also carries deep, unseen scars from his service, particularly a profound survivor's guilt and a complex, painful relationship with the concept of heroism after losing many friends in combat. He has, in the past, reacted negatively and inappropriately to what he perceives as any glorification of military service, especially in professional contexts. His comments to Mr. Walker were a misguided, unprofessional, and deeply regrettable manifestation of his own unresolved trauma. Davies explained that Henderson had seen Mark's uniform, and in his distorted view, felt Mark was using it as a shield or a pass, something that unknowingly triggered his own painful memories of comrades who never made it back to wear any uniform again, let alone seek civilian jobs. It wasn't an excuse for his behavior, Davies emphasized, but it was an explanation. Mr. Henderson was now on administrative leave and was undergoing mandatory counseling and support. My anger towards Henderson, which had been a burning fire, softened just a fraction. It was replaced by a confusing mix of pity and continued frustration. It didn't make his actions right, not by a long shot, but it made them more tragic. Human, even. Then came the biggest twist of all. Mr. Davies looked directly at the camera, as if speaking right to Mark. Mr. Walker, your resume, which Mr. Henderson unfortunately barely glanced at, is impressive. Your service record speaks volumes about your leadership, discipline and commitment, qualities we deeply value at OmniCorp. The way you handled yourself in that difficult interview, despite the provocation, further demonstrates your exceptional character. He paused, and the silence stretched. OmniCorp would like to formally offer you another interview, Mr. Walker, with me, personally. And if you are still interested in working with a company that is now acutely aware of its shortcomings and is committed to doing better, we would also like to discuss creating a new vital role for you to head a new veteran outreach and hiring program at OmniCorp to ensure that no veteran ever feels unwelcome or misunderstood here again. To help us understand, support, and better integrate service members into our workforce. Mark was speechless, so was I. My eyes filled with tears, this time not of anger or sadness, but of disbelief and a fragile emerging hope. An offer, not just an apology, but a chance to make a real tangible difference. Mark took a few days to think. It was a huge decision. He talked to other veterans, seeking their counsel. He talked to me for hours, weighing the pros and cons. The thought of working in the same company as Henderson, even if Henderson was getting help and would likely not be there long term, was difficult. But the chance to create something positive from such a negative experience, to help others like him navigate the often tricky transition to civilian employment, that was a powerful draw. He met with Mr. Davies. He told me the interview was respectful, open, and honest. Mark asked tough questions about the company's commitment. Mr. Davies answered them directly. Mark shared his experiences, his frustrations, and his hopes for veterans transitioning to civilian life. In the end, Mark accepted the position. Not the original manager role he had applied for, but the new one, head of veteran outreach and hiring. He said it felt like a new mission, one he was uniquely qualified for. It wasn't easy at first. There was an initial awkwardness within the company. There were some employees who still thought the whole thing had been overblown by social media. But Mark, with his quiet strength, his unwavering determination, and his genuine empathy, started to make changes. He helped rewrite hiring policies. He instituted training programs for interviewers on veteran awareness and sensitivity. He created a support network and mentorship program for veteran employees within OmniCorp. He never met Mr. Henderson again. We heard through the grapevine that Mr. Henderson eventually left the company after his extended leave, seeking a different path for himself. I truly hoped he found peace and healing. His story was a sad and complicated reminder that scars aren't always visible, and that hurt people often hurt people. Mark found his purpose again. He was making a difference, not on the battlefield with a rifle, but in boardrooms and offices with policy and compassion. He was helping to bridge the gap between the military and civilian worlds, one veteran, one job, one conversation at a time. And our dream of a little house and a dog, it came true. We even got 2 dogs. Looking back, that awful day, that terrible interview, it changed our lives profoundly. It sparked outrage, yes, a wildfire of it. But it also sparked conversation. It sparked understanding, albeit a painful one at times. It showed that one person's negative, prejudiced action could, with courage and the support of a community, be turned into a powerful force for good. Mark's uniform, the one Mr. Henderson had so cruelly called a costume, became a symbol within OmniCorp. Not of entitlement, as Henderson had feared, but of experience, resilience, and the incredible potential that every veteran brings. And I learned that sometimes, the deepest wounds and the most public outcries can lead to the most profound opportunities for healing and growth, not just for one person, but for many. What do you think about Mr. Henderson's reaction, and the company's response? Have you ever experienced or witnessed something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched you, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel for more true stories, and share this video with your friends. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light.